My name is Little Lou, and this is my show, Reviewing the Library. This is the welcome to the new show. This is my first episode. Today, I will be reviewing The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. So, what's it about? It's about this teenager named Holden Caulfield in his time back home from New York City after being flunked out of Pensy Prep. And he's depressed. He's not doing so well. He got flunked out, and he's not happy. The author is the author, J.D. Salinger, is an American novelist who was born in New York City on January 1st, 1919, and died in Cornish, New Hampshire, U.S. on January 27, 2010. He's best known for The Catcher in the Rye. Well, he had other works like the short story collection 9 Stories, but he's mostly known for this book. So, yeah. Now, we're going to move on to spoiler territory, so, I'll give you a 10-second timer so you can leave for this next session, so next little bit. So, I'll give you 10 seconds. So, see you back when you're. Or if you don't want to listen to the spoiler section, just skip to the timestamp in the description. Okay, now as everyone did that, well, here's the plot. For a rough translation in my mind, sorta. Holden Caulfield is telling the story as a 17-year-old. The whole story takes place when he was about 16. And, the story starts off with him standing on top of the hill because he got back from New York with the fencing team. He left all the foils and equipment on the subway without knowing about it because he wasn't paying attention. So they left early. And didn't even have the fencing thing, so they just left back to Pensy Prep. And also he got kicked out of Pensy Prep for bad grades. He was flunked out. He stops by at his history teacher's house, Mr. Spencer, who berates him for failing his classes except English. Later, Holden Caulfield writes an English composition for his roommate Stradlater while he's on his date with Jane Gallagher. When Stradlater comes back, he hates it because it's not what he thought. He's not what he expected for him to write. He wrote about his brother Allie's baseball mitt, and he hates it. Even though it goes so far to refuse to tell him if he had sex with Jane that night. And they get even more pissed that Stradlater ends up giving Holden Caulfield a bloody nose. After that, he starts to pack his stuff and get the hell out of there a few days early before Christmas break. While on the train to New York City, he meets a woman who has a son that goes to Pensy Prep. He lies there and tells his name as Rudolph Schmidt, who is technically the janitor at Pensy Prep, at the dorm. He stops at the Edmont Hotel for a bit, and he also notices that the people who are at the hotel, some of the other people there, they look like perverts. There's an old guy dressed up like a woman, and a couple squirting water at each other's faces. He spends the evening dancing with 3 tourists at the lounge until he gets tired of them, and then he goes to a taxi. He talks about the time when, where the ducks go in the winter. Do they fly off, or does someone pick them up on a truck and gave them to a zoo? He says this twice to 2 separate taxi drivers on that whole sequence. He did it twice, 2 separate taxi drivers. His nightclub visit was pretty disappointing. And on his way back to his room, he meets a elevator worker called Maurice, who turns out to be a pimp, and he decides to give him a prostitute at his door. And even though she enters and disrupts, even though he's a virgin, Holden, he just doesn't want to talk. He just wants to talk. She gets annoyed and asks for $5, and she leaves. Turns out it was actually 10, because Maurice comes back pissed when he wants twice the amount of money that the prostitute got. So he refuses. Holden refuses, and Maurice attacks him right in the stomach, punches him straight there, and gets the second $5 bill, and they walk off. He has a imagination where when he ends up killing Maurice with a pistol. Well, actually no. Afterward, he imagines himself getting shot by Maurice. Pictures of him with a pistol in his hand. Sorry, I messed that up. Damn it. The next morning, Holden becomes even more depressed. He decides to call up Sally Hayes, who was a familiar, or sometimes he calls her a queen of all phonies. They go to the Baltimore Theater, but before that, he buys a special record for Phoebe, his 10-year-old sister, called Little Shirley Beans. After the play, they go ice skating at the Rockefeller Center, and he rants about society and frightens Sally, and he wants her to run away with him and live out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness of New England. She declines. The conversation turns sour, and they part angrily. The two part away. She leaves angrily. Later, he meets his old classmate Carlos for drinks at a bar. He annoys Carl, for whom he expects to be a flit or flitty, which, if you don't know what that is, it's old slang for a homosexual. And the reason why he does this, how he does it, is by questioning him about his sex life. Luce then says Holden to go see a psychiatrist to understand himself more better, and then Holden gets drunk, awkwardly flirts with a few adults, and calls an icy Sally. He accidentally breaks Phoebe's record and finds himself poor, broke as hell. And then he decides to go see Phoebe, so he sneaks in his parents' apartment, and then wakes her up and tells him that he's home. She's happy to see him, but she later gets pissed when she finds out that he got flunked out. He tries to, and wants to know if she even cares about anything. Well, instead he shares a fantasy, like an imagination that he becomes a hero after saving some kids from falling off a cliff in a field of rye. He's basing this imagination off a Robert Bones poem he's misinterpreting. And that's pretty much it. He leaves, goes to see his former English teacher, Mr. Tellini, who was concerned about him, because he's headed for a terrible fall. And then he sleeps and then Holden Caulfield sleeps on the couch in his house. And then at one point in the night, Mr. Antolini pats his head, and he thinks he might be, Holden interprets as a sexual advance. He gets out of there and sleeps in the waiting room, the train waiting room at the Grand Central Terminal. He's sinking even more despair at the same time. By next morning, he lost all hopes in New York City. So he's planning to head out west to be a deaf mute, working at a gas station attendant in a log cabin. He wants to meet Phoebe at lunchtime, so he makes a letter so he can give it to the headmaster, so Phoebe knows. On the way, while he's at the school, he sees the words "fuck you" written on the wall. So offended that the kids might find out what that means, he goes up and rubs it away. And then after that, he goes and finds Phoebe at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She has a suitcase with her, and she wants to go with him. He refuses. She's mad. She decides to cheer her up by allowing her to skip school to go to the Central Park Zoo. She agrees, but she's still as angry. They eventually reach the carousel, and she buys her a ticket, and she's no longer mad. She's happy. And that whole time, the whole sight of her riding that carousel, all round and round, makes him filled with happiness. In the end, he's reluctant. That's the end of his story. He's reluctant to say more about talk of school, because if he talks about it too much, he's gonna miss his former classmates even more than he already does. So yeah. Now, for the pros and cons about this. I found the con is I found this book kind of interesting. Of like this guy who's like trying to go through life, this teenager trying to go through life, and like having suckish grades and stuff. He's like not having a good time and stuff. I found it pretty interesting. But that's like my only pro so far in this show. But my con is his language is too limiting. Like he says the word phony, which I know that was known for its dialect, but I do know he uses the word sort of like around 100 times or something in total. So it gets kind of like tedious seeing the same little group of 2 words or something throughout the book. So yeah. He even mentions it in the narration. He has a bit of a lousy vocabulary, so yeah, no shit. So yeah, so that's it. That's all. That's it for the show. I give this book from a scale of 1 to 10. I give it a 8 out of 10. See ya. Bye.